my name is Ashley and I'm a mom of two little girls. One is a 26-month-old toddler and the other is a 2-month-old baby. When you're a parent implementing Montessori philosophies at home with your children, at first it can often be really daunting because there are just so many specifics and technicalities surrounding what actually constitutes a Montessori environment. One of the big ones is the role of pretend play and imagination in a Montessori setting. But before we jump into that, I do want to point out one important thing. We are discussing a Montessori home environment here, not a Montessori classroom. While I'm sure there are many parents out there who want to and manage to really stay true to strict Montessori in their home environment, there are also many parents who want just that little bit of flexibility. So from one busy parent to another, today let's chat a little bit about Montessori pretend play and imagination in your home. So the number one reason that pretend play in a Montessori environment comes into question is because of this idea that children between the ages of birth and 6 years old have a very hard time distinguishing between what's fantasy and what's actually reality. And there's actually a ton of research to support this. I'll be sure to link a couple of articles down below for you guys if you're interested in reading more about that. But what I'd like to point out simply here is that there is definitely a way to integrate pretend play into a Montessori environment without involving elements of fiction. And that's simply to allow your child to pretend play based on things that they see around them every single day. So for example, you might see your children pretending to cook you food or pretending to take care of babies just as they would their little brothers and sisters. You might see them pretending to do things that they see you doing around the house every day, like washing dishes or vacuuming the floor. You might see your child using some of their toy cars to play out scenes that they see outside in their neighborhood if they happen to see construction trucks and garbage vehicles. There are all kinds of scenarios that your child experiences at home every day from which they can draw that information to engage in pretend play. It doesn't necessarily have to involve princesses and fairies and scary witches and things like that. And it's important to note that this is developmentally normal and appropriate for all small children. Sorry that I'm so close to you guys now, but I'm actually nursing Mia right now because she woke up in the middle of me filming this and decided that she was hungry, and this is literally the only time today that I have to film this, so we're just gonna keep going. So as I was saying, in a traditional Montessori classroom, you often won't find open-ended toys like wooden blocks and scarves and things like that, but in a Montessori home environment, you often do find these things, and there is a reason for that. Children need a creative outlet, and if they can't be creative at home with you, then where else can they exercise that? So even though it's not strict Montessori per se, I wouldn't be too hard on yourself about having those types of toys available to your child in your home. What's interesting about this idea of having open-ended toys in a Montessori home though, is that they don't have to be used for fantasy. Oftentimes you'll catch your child using those types of items for pretend play that are still based in reality. For example, they might use their wooden blocks to make racetracks for cars or fences for their farm animals. They might even use a block as a pretend bar of soap in the kitchen to wash their hands. There are all kinds of things that your child can use these toys for that don't necessarily involve fictitious characters. Personally, my daughter absolutely loves playing with her blocks, not just for imaginative play, but also for just the simple act of practicing stacking things. My toddler also recently received a beautiful set of play silks from Sarah Silks, which I will link down below for you guys if you're interested in seeing them for yourself. She loves to use these silks for all kinds of reality-based imaginative play. Hands down, one of her favorites is building forts with me that she can crawl into and read books inside of and pretend she's taking naps. She also likes to pretend it's a little house and will often tell me that she hears somebody knocking and she wants to go open the door to see who's there. Because she recently became a big sister to little Mia here, she also really enjoys wearing her pretend baby dolls. So I will actually help her by wrapping the silks around her so that she can wear her babies just like you saw me wearing Mia a little bit earlier. She also really likes to use her silks when she gets inside her empty diaper box that she calls her rocket ship, and she pretends to blast off to the moon all the time. She also received a really beautiful streamer from Sarah Silks, which has been absolutely perfect for her, just being able to explore the schema of rotation. She's constantly spinning around and whipping things in circles, and this streamer has provided the perfect positive outlet for that. Perhaps one of the biggest pretend play items that you'll see in a home environment that you will not see in a traditional Montessori setting is the idea of a pretend play kitchen. Now, we have one one in our home, and I know that there are many Montessori families that do. But what you'll often see is that many people have hacked their kitchens, especially the IKEA one that seems to be the most popular one for this. They'll actually turn it into a functional kitchen that their toddlers can use. So there are definitely some parents out there who might be wondering, well, what about practical life skills? Do they really need a pretend play kitchen if they're in the kitchen with you cooking and doing those actual skills with real food and real utensils? And that's a great question. I know that my toddler is very involved in the kitchen with me, as many of your toddlers probably are as well. They're definitely not too young to do things like stirring while you're baking something or scrubbing and washing vegetables. As they get a little bit older, they can learn how to slice some of their own snacks like bananas or peel oranges. They can even start spreading peanut butter and jelly to help prepare their own sandwiches for lunch. There's all kinds of things that toddlers can do in the kitchen. I know that for our family personally, even though my toddler is in the kitchen with us handling real foods and utensils all the time, she still really enjoys her pretend play kitchen. Sometimes she wants to cook when cooking is just not an option in our schedule that day. So her pretend play kitchen allows her to kind of play out that scenario and get that out of her system, if you will. So again, even though your philosophy on this might differ, I would argue that there is a place for a pretend play kitchen in a home setting for sure. I don't see anything wrong with your child pretending to cook if that's what they want to do. So another concern in a Montessori environment is the selection of books that you're offering your child. You want to give them things that have realistic pictures or realistic drawings of things that they see around them every single day. Remember that before the age of 6, children have a really hard time distinguishing between what's real and what's fantasy. So for example, if your child sees a book about a mouse that's sweeping and cleaning their house versus a book that has a picture of a bird nesting with her babies in it, if you were to ask a 2 or 3-year-old child which one was real and which one was pretend, they would have a very hard time actually being able to tell the difference between the two. Young children's imagination stems from what they've learned as real around them in their environment. So it becomes really important as a parent to constantly provide them with things that are reality-based. This way they can build a really solid mental framework of what the world is really like before they start using their own imagination and creativity to imagine things that don't perhaps really exist. Another argument for providing them with reality-based books versus fictitious story time type books is the idea that when you give them a fictional story, you're basically projecting an adult's fantasies onto the child's mind. Why not give them the chance to actually be creative and come up with those ideas on their own? So with these ideas in mind, you might actually notice that your toddler gravitates toward books that are based in reality. It's a pretty well-known fact that kids love picture books, and there's a reason for that. Usually those pictures involve things that they see around them in their homes and in their outside environment every single day. These are things that they're familiar with. They're things that they can relate to. And I don't necessarily mean that all of the pictures have to be real, but they should be reality-based. So if it's a drawing of a cat, it should look like a cat, not a fictitious purple cat that wouldn't really exist in real life. Just as an example from my personal experience, my daughter and I went to the library last week and checked out some of the books that you see on the shelf behind me. And hands down, her favorite book that she has asked me to read about 50 times since we checked it out is that little blue book called Tubby that's on the shelf behind me. The story is literally just about a child that is getting ready for bed. Yes, it is kind of like a cartoon drawing, but it's all based in reality. It's things that she experiences every single day when we do our bedtime routine, and she thinks it is hilarious. Now, if you do want to offer fictional stories to your child in their collection of books, in a home environment, there's nothing wrong with that, but it really becomes important then for you to have that conversation with your child as you're reading about the fact that the things you're reading about don't really exist. So for example, there is a book that is also on the shelf that's just out of the frame here that she picked up at the library and really wanted to check out, even though it was something that I probably would have never selected for her. And it involves animals that are all kinds of crazy colors that don't really exist. So every time we read the book together, I make sure to have that conversation with her. I ask her questions like, are monkeys really purple? Do frogs really get up and walk around? No. Things like that, just so that she gets the idea that these are pretend. Now, I know there are definitely a few parents out there who have children with what you might consider a wild imagination, and you might be asking yourself, is this okay? Again, in a Montessori environment, the most important thing you can do is to follow your child. So if they're engaging in pretend play that does involve some elements of fantasy and things that don't really exist, you don't necessarily need to rush in there and stop them from playing those games. Children have a developmental need to play out these ideas. So if it's something that your child is coming up with on their own, just step back and allow them to play it out. The best thing that you can do as a parent from that point onward is just to continue offering them things that are reality-based so that they have that solid framework, even though they are playing out a little bit of fantasy from time to time. Again, I really urge you, as you're considering what the role of imagination and pretend play is in your Montessori home, to remember that it is exactly that. It's a home environment. It is not a traditional Montessori classroom. You do have a little bit of flexibility and choice as the parent to decide what you allow in your home and what you don't. After all, as parents, we're just doing the best that we can for our children with the resources and information that we have available to us. If you have any questions about something that I mentioned in this video today, or if you yourself have any ideas about the role of pretend play in a Montessori home environment, then definitely leave your comments below and let's talk about it. If you liked today's video, then please be sure to give it a big thumbs up. And in case you're new to my channel, I just wanted to let you know that this video is part of a larger series called Montessori at Home, aimed at providing practical tips and advice for busy parents like you and I for implementing Montessori philosophies at home with your children. So if that sounds like something that you're interested in watching more of, then you might consider subscribing to my channel and hitting that notification bell, because I do upload a video just like this one every single week. Thanks again so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.